We're going to call the meeting to order. We're going to start off with a roll call. Mrs. Sugars, will you take a roll call, please?
Mrs. Matlack.
Here.
Mrs. Neary.
Here.
Mr. Rossi.
Here.
Mrs. Seidel.
Here.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Here.
Mrs. Schultz. Mrs. Tong.
Here.
Dr. Wong.
Here.
Mr. Goodwin.
Here. And now, can everyone join with me as we stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Next, we're going to go ahead and have the a vote on the approval of our meeting minutes for the following meetings. The regular action meeting on February 26, 2019, the board work session / action meeting on February 12th, 2019. Did I say 16 earlier? I'm back for the 3 years. All right, and also the town hall meetings dated February 7th, February 9th, February 21st, and February 25th, 2019, and the executive session meetings dated February 12th and February 26th, 2019. Do I have a second? Mrs. Neary. Are there any comments on the meeting minutes? Okay. If not, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Matlack.
Yes.
Mrs. Neary.
Yes.
Mr. Rossi.
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel.
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino.
Yes.
Mrs. Tong.
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes. Next, we don't have any presentations today. However, I wanted to see if there's any board correspondence that anyone would like to share. Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. As a big believer in transparency, I have an update I would like to share with the community this evening. My family is moving out of state to an unexpected but once-in-a-lifetime opportunity in my wife's career. As a result, it is with great regret that I must resign from the board as of June 12, 2019. After discussions with Mr. Goodwin, we agreed that given the long-term impact of the bond ad hoc committee, that it would be appropriate to appoint one of the new board members, Lori Neary, instead of myself. I am dedicated to working through the date of my departure, as I was elected to do, not only by the community members that voted for me, but the community as a whole. I'm confident that the board leadership will provide the necessary information to the community as to the procedure for filling a vacant board seat. I encourage any and all eligible and interested members of the community to apply. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other correspondence at this time? If not, I did want to just read I know there was a lot of communication out there about the last budget meeting. And I just wanted to just talk a little bit and read a short statement regarding the board and our responsibility regarding the budget. The board takes all of its responsibilities, including passage of the district annual budget, very seriously. Before I go into more detail regarding the budget, its contents, or the philosophy behind passing it, I would like to reiterate the role of the school board. Under state law, the role of the school board in New Jersey is very specific. The board has a dual role. One, we represent the concerns of the citizens, taxpayers, and parents to the school administrators. And two, we represent the needs of the students and school district to the citizens, taxpayers, and parents of the community. We as a board do not operate the district on a day-to-day basis. That job is the superintendent, who is the district chief executive. Rather, we set the policies, goals and objectives for the district, we also hold the superintendent responsible for implementing those policies and achieving those goals. The Board of Education goals are posted on the website. And for the goal number 2 that was posted on the website is create a cost-effective budget that provides for educational resources as well as preventive maintenance and ongoing facility improvement in all schools. The measurable actions associated with that goal are listed in it as well. And you can find those goals out on the district website in terms of goals for the board. The board goals for the district. And the 2019-2020 budget includes all of the items that have been prioritized by the district. Among them are continued necessary maintenance, furniture, equipment, ongoing security initiatives, implementation of district-wide full-day kindergarten, additional teaching staff for ESL and world language, additional special education classes, continued funding for the district technology plan. And I would also note that the 2019-2020 preliminary budget meets all the needs with a zero tax impact to the citizens of Cherry Hill. What many people may be unaware of is the district ongoing initiative covers in the budget. Under security, we have a staff of 9 campus police officers. This means that we are the only district in the state with its own armed police force and armed security, director of security, and 6 security staff members. So we are right now, you may have seen some things on the agenda that we'll have to look at again, but basically we're the only district in the state with our own police force. The district is committed to continuing to implement additional security measures as recommended by the district security consultant. This year, High School East and West received access control, door sensors, cameras, strobe lights, and other security measures. Next year, they will receive security vestibules at the front entrances. The vestibules mean that no longer will visitors be able to come in and walk freely in order to get to the school office, but they'll first have to go through that area, single point of access, to drop off an item for a student or to visit the office. Also not visible to the public are the security training sessions, professional development, maintenance projects, and other measures paid out of the budget. The district also places a high priority on many mental service offerings. We all know that mental health supports are a key component of health and safety of our students. I urge the community members to review some of the services under the Student Services Department link on the district website. Among our mental health supports are full-time guidance counselors in every school, district psychologists, mandatory QPR or question, persuade, refer training for all staff, peer leader training for students, and Stop It app in all of our middle school and high schools. There also seems to be some confusion around the capital reserve budget. The capital budget spends capital project spending for the capital reserve account encompasses a portion of work that would have been included in the bond, but we don't have that at this point in time. But the work has been prioritized as critical. It is important to understand that the auditorium wall project at Cherry Hill East High School was discovered during an emergency repair of the auditorium roof. The wall issue is clearly serious and urgent and must be addressed. The district now has a multifaceted challenge of prioritizing and addressing many critical facility issues with very limited funding while planning new steps for the next version of the bond. The board vote to pass the preliminary 2019 2020 budget was made with the understanding that dozens of accomplished and highly skilled professionals contributed their expertise and to everything from the full day kindergarten to prioritizing critical projects ahead. It is a tremendous responsibility to keep our nearly 11,000 students and 1,700 employees safe, healthy, and academically thriving within our 1.1 million square feet of building space and 356 acres of grounds. So we have to move forward. And I just wanted to read that to let you know that we, on this board, and especially as I've gotten to know the members of the board, everyone on this board, I believe, is extremely passionate and focused on doing their best and doing whatever they can to make sure that we take care of our students, we take care of our staff, and we meet the needs that the community, make sure that we're meeting the needs, this district is meeting the needs of the community. And I know from all the people that come out, I know that you guys are really passionate, and I see all the messages online. I know people are really passionate. So I think I guess this is my implore. Let's work together. This is a team effort, and we're not, if we're fighting this against each other and trying to put each other down, how are we going to really make this, do the important tasks of making sure our students are taken care of, our staff is taken care of? And I just really want to implore you, please, this is a team effort. Let's work together. Let's make this happen for our students, for our staff, and let's do our best for this community, because this is really what this is about. And this is why people sit on this board. All these volunteers around here on this board are here because of a passion for doing their best and giving their best for our community and for our students. And I know everyone that comes out to these meetings, I'm pretty sure you could figure out other things, better things to do. But I know you're passionate about this. So I think we're all on the same, if we all work together, we can all really make sure that we do the best for this district, for our students, and for our staff. So that's my statement. I just wanted to share with you all tonight. With that, are there any comments? Oh, let me read it. So we now have our first public, oh wait, I'm sorry. I'm skipping the students. Okay, first, before we get to public comment, we're going to go to our students. And this week, we're going to start with Julia from East.
Good evening, esteemed members of the Board of Education. I have a brief update for you regarding student opinions at Cherry Hill East. This month, we did our third student survey of the year, and considering the recent discussion of the board on the construction options and renovation solutions for the East Auditorium, we surveyed students on their opinions and knowledge of the auditorium work at East. We hope that this information will give the board a better idea of the usage of the auditorium at East and the perspective of the students on the issue at hand. Of the students we surveyed, approximately 72% participate in groups like music, theater, and culture clubs that rely on the auditorium for major events. 28% were not involved in any of the listed activities that rely heavily on the auditorium. 90.7% of students who completed the survey have attended an event held in the East Auditorium. This does not include any mandatory events like class meetings, trip meetings, or assemblies. So these students are going out of their way to see shows, see multicultural day events that are held in the auditorium. Approximately 30% of the students reported rarely using the auditorium, while 21% reported using the auditorium almost daily. 43% of students were unaware of any repair happening currently at the auditorium, while 5% were, quote, well informed about the details and complications of the project. That was kind of a scalar question, so it was a scale of 1 to 5. 50% of respondents believe that the most reasonable way to approach the projects is to focus primarily on structural issues. 36% believe it is to tear down the current auditorium and build a new one, while the remaining students believe that we should focus primarily on aesthetic issues in the auditorium. 59% of students believe that the construction of a new auditorium would not negatively impact the work of the groups that use the stage, and 47% of students would be more likely to vote for a bond referendum that includes auditorium construction. 42% said that the auditorium construction would have no impact on their vote, and 11% would be less likely to vote for a bond that includes auditorium construction. So this concludes my report of the student survey for this month. Are there any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Julia. And now Sonia will give us a report for West.
All right, good evening. This is my report on the happenings in the Cherry Hill West community as of the last month. So in athletics news, March 1st marked the beginning of the boys' baseball season and the girls' softball season. Neither team let the snow on the ground keep them from getting right to business. The boys held a baseball camp for students in grades 3 through 8 on Saturday, March 23rd and Sunday, March 24th. The boys' basketball team made it to their first round of playoffs on February 26th, but unfortunately lost to Ocean City 31-24. Even so, congratulations to the team on the great run, and things are looking great for next year's run. The ladies lacrosse team played their first scrimmage match on March 15th and left with a win, so congratulations to that team on a great start. And also on Tuesday, April 2nd, from 11 a.m. to 10 p.m., the West boys and girls lacrosse teams will be holding a fundraiser at the California Pizza Kitchen in the Cherry Hill Mall. Mention the fundraiser, and 20% of your purchase will go towards supporting those athletes. In performing arts news, the West vocal and instrumental music departments are preparing challenging pieces of music to perform at the 2019 Festivals of Music competition. From April 4th to April 7th, students will travel to Virginia Beach to compete and learn skills that will help them grow as performers. These same pieces will be featured alongside others at the spring concert on Thursday, May 30th. Also, on Wednesday, March 6th, the West Jazz Ensemble competed in the New Jersey State Prelims. Congratulations to drummer Justin Coulihan on winning an Outstanding Soloist Award, and congratulations to the entire ensemble for winning the Best Saxophone Section Award. Also, congratulations to the cast and crew of the Spring Musical Chicago on an excellent opening weekend, which included a special senior citizen matinee on Thursday, March 21st, followed by a luncheon catered by West's culinary students. On their behalf, I would also like to thank CBS 3 anchor Mr. Jim Donovan for supporting the production and razzle-dazzling the crowd with 3 excellent cameo appearances this past weekend. The last 3 performances are coming up this weekend. The White Cast will star on March 29th and 30th at 7 p.m., and the Purple Cast will star on March 30th at 2 p.m. In other news, on Saturday, March 9th, Cherry Hill West hosted an administration of the SAT exam. For any students who have yet to take this test or who are thinking of retaking the test, West will also administer this exam on May 4th and June 1st of this year. On Thursday, March 7th, students from every physics class and section at Cherry Hill West went head-to-head in a bridge building competition. The goal of the project was to build the strongest bridge possible out of nothing but a box of spaghetti and glue. Our students rose to the challenge and delivered many impressive products. The event is a fun and educational day that students look forward to every year, and I'm happy to share with you that Bridge Day 2019 was a success as well. And finally, tomorrow night, on Wednesday, March 27th at 7 p.m., the Cherry Hill West Project Lit Book Club will be hosting its first ever literacy night. Students in grades 6 through 12, their parents, and other community members are invited to come out and discuss stories that matter in their lives. There will also be refreshments, special guests, and giveaways. And that concludes my report. Are there any questions? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It sounds like some great stuff happening at West and great conversations going on at East. Next, we have our first public comment section. There will be 2 opportunities for the public to comment this evening. The first public comment section is for agenda items only. There will be another section at the end if you want to speak about something else. If you'd like to speak now, please identify the agenda item, speak into the microphone clearly, and state your name and address. The speaker will be given a maximum of 3 minutes to speak. We don't have our little timer up here, so you're going to have to be kind of looking out the corner of your eye for Mrs. Wilson. She may speak out over there. So when your 3 minutes are up, she'll let you know. Would anyone like to speak on any items tonight? Agenda items. Okay. If not, we're going to move on. All right. So next, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Smith for any superintendent comments.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. I have a few short remarks. I would like to thank the Cherry Hill Town Council and Mayor Khan, who at last night's Town Council meeting recognized our East and West girls wrestling teams, who completed their inaugural seasons recently. The certificate they received reads, "For stepping outside of their comfort zones and joining forces in a sport that is predominantly male." And that recognition is especially appropriate given it's during Women's History Month. Last week at our district leadership team meeting in this very room, Dr. Chapman asked our administrators, and I'm paraphrasing here because it's impossible to quote Dr. Chapman, think about a woman or women without whose guidance and influence you would not be in this room. Powerful examples were shared. I thought of my wife, my daughters, my mentors. And everywhere we look in our district, there are so many examples of women whose guidance is absolutely essential, not just to individuals, but also to the greatness of our district as a whole. And in this room, our Board of Education, for example, including our student representatives, who just spoke so well, as you always do. So, to our central administration leadership, also in this room, to our PTAs in every room and in our schools, and to our teaching staff, perhaps most of all, because they're the ones who work with our amazing 11,000 students, as you said, Mr. Goodwin, every day. So it's wonderful, and thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so next on our agenda, we're gonna go into our action agenda, and starting off with curriculum and instruction, I'm going to ask Dr. Wang to move those items.
Okay, I will. The superintendent recommends and I move the following. Number 1, approval of attendance at conferences and workshops for the 2018-2019 school year. Number 2, approval of Euroka math resources for 2019-2020 school year. Do I have a second? Mrs. Malak? Are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Neary,
Yes.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpolino,
Yes.
Mrs. Tong,
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes. Thank you, Dr. Wong. Next, in Mrs. Schultz's absence, I'm going to go ahead and move the BNF agenda. So first of all, I just wanted to point out to everyone that there's a blue sheet, that additional item under number 2 for the BNF agenda. And also, we are going to table item 4 for right now. Item 4 under the BNF agenda, we're going to table that for now. And we will be voting on that at our next meeting, item number 4 on the agenda. So I think there's also new information on item number 3 as well. So with that, let me go ahead and make the motion. If I can go back here. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following: 1, financial reports; 2, resolution of awards, of award of bids; 3, resolution of award of transportation; and 5, acceptance of donations. Do I have a second? Mrs. Neary, are there any questions? Okay. If not, Mrs. Sugars, please.
Mr. Goodwin,
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Neary,
Yes.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpellino,
Yes.
Mrs. Tong,
Yes.
Dr. Wong.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Next, I'm going to ask Mrs. Seidel to move human resource items.
Thank you, Mr. Goodwin. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, termination of employment certificated. Number 2, termination of employment non-certificated. Number 3, appointments certificated. Number 4, appointments non-certificated. Number 5, leaves of absence certificated. Number 6, leaves of absence non-certificated. Number 7, assignment salary change certificated. And number 8, assignment salary change non-certificated. Do I have a second? Mrs. Scarpellino, any questions or comments? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Neary,
Yes.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Mrs. Scarpellino,
Yes to all.
Mrs. Tong,
Yes.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes. Thank you, Mrs. Seidel. And next, we have P&L. I'm going to ask Mrs. Scarpellino to move those items, please.
Certainly. The superintendent recommends, and I move the following. Number 1, first reading of policy and regulations. Do I have a second? Mrs. Seidel, are there any questions? Seeing none, Mrs. Sugars?
Mrs. Scarpellino,
Yes.
Mrs. Matlack,
Yes.
Mrs. Neary,
Yes.
Mr. Rossi,
Yes.
Mrs. Seidel,
Yes.
Mrs. Tong,
Yes.
Dr. Wong,
Yes.
Mr. Goodwin.
Yes.
And Mr. Goodwin, before I hand things back over to you, I would just like to take a minute to discuss with the board the upcoming budget meetings for the Assembly and for the Senate. Tomorrow is the Assembly Budget Committee meeting, and that will be in Trenton. And the Senate Budget Committee meeting is going to be on Thursday at Carney's Point, which at the Salem Community College. And I believe you all have received a copy of my statement, my testimony that I will read, because I have been scheduled to testify at both. And I just wanted to find out if we are in consensus on the statement, and if there's any questions about that, I'd like to answer those now. Mrs. Seidel.
I first just want to thank you for being able to attend. I have a work conflict, so I cannot, but I am in agreement on the statement.
Anyone else have any comments, questions? Okay, seeing none, I will be reading that statement and also handing in copies for the record. So thank you all for taking time to look at it. Back to you, Mr. Goodwin.
Thank you, Mrs. Scarpellino. And I too, I too think I've read the statement. I really appreciate you taking the time to do that, and definitely you have my support there. Okay. Next, we don't have any agenda items to move under strategic planning, but I'm going to ask Mrs. Matlack to lead some discussion items for strategic planning, please.
Yes, I have a couple updates. The first is about the ad hoc committee. Board leadership has requested that we share the names of the ad hoc committee members. Mrs. Sugars has alerted the committee members that we would be doing this. We'll also post a list on the website tomorrow. Mrs. Seidel has the list and will read the names.
Thank you, Mrs. Matlack. So I apologize in advance if I butcher any last names, so please bear with me. So the members of our ad hoc committee are as follows: Lori Perlow, Rabbi Lawrence Cernovitz, Colleen Spagnuolo, Michael Witkowski, Andrew McIlvain, Thomas Lisi, Greg Blackburn, Meredith Gamble, Koresh Dahadwala, Meredith Levin, Kevin Musig, Andrew Berend, Jane Fryman, Kristen Viglietta, Jean Rentazelos, Emily Capella, Bria Kielsen, Nancy Ryan, Jennifer Brownbaugh, Rick Short, Alana Yarez, Beth Becker, and then from the township, we have Sarah Lipsett. From CHEA, we have Steve Redfern. We have Dr. John Cafagna representing the district and administration. And then from a board perspective, it's Mrs. Schultz, Mrs. Neary, and myself. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a couple updates on the survey. The survey deadline is tomorrow. Paper copies were provided by the library after the last forum on March 10th. Regarding the survey, so far we've had 1,342 survey responses. 639 were parents, 426 employees, and 277 residents responded. And the last update I have is regarding the student participation. Mrs. Judy Wilson will be meeting with the students at East and West on April 2nd for their input concerning the bond. She'll meet during lunch periods and after classes so as not to disturb classroom time. And Dr. Smith will be meeting with students at the Alternative High School on April 2nd for their input concerning the bond. Does anybody have any questions or comments regarding those updates? No? Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Matlack. Next, we have our second public discussion section. And now you can speak on any topic. We just asked you come to the microphone, speak your name clearly into the microphone and with your name and address. The speaker has a maximum of 3 minutes, and you can be looking out the corner of your eye for Mrs. Wilson. She will let you know when your 3 minutes are up.
Hello, everybody. This is my first time at a board meeting. Some of you might know my name. My name is Mark Lippert. I came here basically because I have an autistic child, and my first go-around dealing with the board, dealing with the district has been horrific. Everybody's told me Cherry Hill is a very difficult place to deal with, and now I'm finding out why. My daughter's sitting home, has no services since February 28th. And I just want to bring to everybody's attention that Cherry Hill shouldn't be such a hard place to deal with. That's all I want to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Rick Short, 10. Hello? Is this on? Okay. Rick Short, 1002 Chelton Parkway. First off, thank you for the district starting the psych test. Thank you for creating the ad hoc committee and allowing everyone to be on it who signed up. Genius move. But let's get down to business here, guys. Mr. Goodwin, these are questions directed at you. These are 100% true facts. Fact number 1, please find me 14 other schools in the state of New Jersey that has no basic cameras and has no 3M films on any of their schools. Please find them, because I believe you will not. That is the concern of the public. You're talking about 7,000 students. 7,000 students with no basic security. You know, I stood here. I was the only person that came up against the bond. I said it was a failure. Besides that, the security design of the bond was a failure. And guess what? I was right. I stood here with bulletproof glass 2 times to tell the district that they didn't know what they're doing with their 3M films. And guess what? I was right. I stand up here time and time again, and you guys constantly ignore the public's concern about keeping the basic rules of the state security, which you don't. Mr. Rossi, on 2/27, the night of the security meltdown, said the following: "You guys should all be ashamed of yourself sitting behind that table." That was his quote within 11 seconds. He was sticking up for security. He was mad. The district constantly ignores the obvious. Again, I repeat myself. You cannot debate these numbers. 19 schools, -2. That means you leave 17 unprotected. That night, at the last board meeting, it came very close to swinging the vote. One more vote, and you would have been forced to do security. You continually to ignore the obvious. Mr. Rossi also stood here. I have about 30 seconds left, I understand that. He said, not really sure of the effectiveness of this overall security plan. You ignored him. He's elected now. If we get one more vote, we can fix it. And you will constantly ignore the obvious. And this is what you get.
Thank you. Anyone else?
3 minutes go quickly. My name is Jeff Podowitz. I live in 110 Kilburn Drive, Cherry Hill, New Jersey. As we all know, Toms River fought for their district. We know that Chesterfield fought, and with our representatives and with their Republican representatives and their township, they're going to get $5,000 in 24-25 a student. Cherry Hill, we'll be lucky if we get $2,500 a student. There's something that was a statement from the Cherry Hill Public Schools. You both signed off on it. Mr. Goodwin, Mr. Smith signed off of it. It's a graph. I think you need to redo that graph. The high number here is 29, but according to statistics from Cherry Hill Fair Funding, the high of uncapped aid was actually 37. I think it was higher than that. I think it was closer to 40. What's worse is the low. You have the low down as 11. The low is really 7.9. So you really have to expand this graph to 40 and to 5 and go down. Who gave you these numbers? Because who made this graph? Did you all make this graph, both of you? Did you make this graph? Dr. Smith, did you make the graph?
Question and answer. Yeah, you can make a statement.
Okay, so I can't even get an answer of who made this graph. Okay, you should. One last thing is that in the end, the uncapped aid, according to NJ Education Aid, is $26 million. We're not going to get 29, and that number is in flux. We'll probably get less. So 5 years down the line, who knows what we'll get? And remember, the maximum we got 30 years ago was 20.5 million. 30 years ago. And we've never reached that since. That means, what are we going to get? 25, 26, 24, 35 years after that? We're being cheated. Enough should be enough. I don't know what you're going to say, but the bottom line is we have been cheated so much over the years. The cumulative effect may be $400 to $500 million over those years of aid, based on today's dollars. It may be that much, 400 to 500 million cumulative. All right, on the low end, 400 million. Just 200 million over the last 10 years. So over the last 20 years before that, it may very well be that much, 400 million. No community can survive that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
hopefully my voice will hold out. Andy McIlvain, 23 Jade Lane. I wanted to take this opportunity to share my experience with school security with the board and the administration, and to make a proposal that I hope will ease community concern over safety in our schools. As you know, from 2003, or as you may know, from 2003 to 2013, I served as a school business administrator in Cumberland County. When I began in February 2003, there was a substantial problem of gang violence in the county that has spilled over into the hallways of our high school, culminating in a massive fight involving nearly 50 youths. Because we had previously installed security cameras throughout the building, and because we had a quick response plan with school security, and it didn't hurt that the state police barracks was half a mile away, the fight was broken up before any serious injuries occurred, and because we recorded the incident, we were able to appropriately discipline the ringleaders. As part of a building project a few years later, we installed a security vestibule at the main entrance, which included swipe card technology. Since the main office was adjacent to the front door, we required only minor modifications to the office to place a viewing window for identification purposes for visitors. There are two key elements in my mind to school security: how to keep the bad people out and what to do with them once they are in. Since virtually impossible to keep someone determined to cause harm out of a public building for very long, it is much better to have good plans for dealing with them once they are in. This includes instantaneous internal communication, contact protocols to local police, and cameras to pinpoint the location of the intruder. I was encouraged at the last action meeting to hear that the board was willing to consider reworking the list of capital projects in the preliminary budget. I would hope that funding could be found within that list to bring forward school security as a high priority, and that the BNF committee will give it consideration at its next meeting for action in the next cycle prior to the final budget approval. Included in the 12-18 bond was $13.4 million for school security, including $2.5 million for cameras and swipe cards to be installed in 10 elementary schools and 3 middle schools. Based on my experience, by far the best investment the board could make, given limited funding, would be in security cameras, swipe card systems, and bullet-resistant films. For $2.5 to $3 million, a large proportion of the schools could be covered. Security vestibules, while useful in a comprehensive security program, are less critical and could be deferred until bond funding comes available. And I also gave a copy of an article to Mr. Goodwin, if he wants to share that with the administration, involving locks for individual school classroom doors. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Hi, Ben Ovadia, 100 Roanoke Road. I first wanted to say, I wrote it down here somewhere, let's work together. I thought that was a great quote. I mean, it's one of those things. How did we become convinced we were on the opposite sides of anything? There are 11,500 students, 1,700 staff, and if we could just fix it all, everyone should be happy. We're really not on the I'll tell a quick story about myself, is that I really never understood why we capitalized we and colored it in every communication from the district. Didn't understand it. It took me a couple years to really understand what we were doing. How are we dividing each other and ourselves in a situation of crisis? It's a mistake. You know, just I guess W would be, I guess I see the conflict. Then W would be capitalized and E wouldn't. Anyway, I mean, it's just one of those things. We can quibble over we and what colors they are. I don't know, but then if you switch the colors. Let me just put it to you this way. I think that if we do work together and figure out what's wrong, I think we can proceed together. There will always be some dissension, right, from I guess this side of the room in some way, or perhaps we would have found something better to do today, but to be here. But since I'm here anyway, couple things, and I spoke about this maybe either 3 or 5 weeks ago. I've lost count. I'm clearly here too much. But, you know, the review of what's wrong. What's wrong? If our car were to crash, our first question before we start fixing it would absolutely be, what's wrong? How bad is it? Does it make sense to buy a new car? In this situation, there's no way that makes sense, but it would be at least a fair question. Let's figure out what's wrong in 2019, not in 2013. People have said maybe that report exists, and if it does, then great. But let's know that. Even if it does exist, let's peer review it. I don't know, Anne behind me has some concerns about how long a peer review is going to take. Let's figure it out. Maybe it's 6 years. If it's 6 years, we're not going to do it. But maybe it's 3 months. And if it were, then we should, right? There are ways to save money. If we're spending $200 million a year, there's got to be ways to save money. I mean, there just has to be. Could that be green infrastructure? Could that be a change in configuration? Could it be abandoning some schools, rebuilding them bigger somewhere else? I don't know. I mean, there's no way I'm going to figure this out. I'd ask you to spend the time and money to think about, is it worth making a decision? Let's get to those decision points and figure out what the right decisions are. And then 3 or 5 weeks ago, whenever I was here last and speaking, I remember I was deathly ill. I don't remember much else. I talked about a development office. I talked about feasibility for what could we raise. Could we raise $18 million for a theater, right? I don't know. I mean, I'd hate to see us raise $18 million and spend it on a theater, but who knows? Maybe we can raise 3 times that. We could build 3 theaters, and I don't know. But it's worth figuring out. I mean, I work in fundraising. It's worth figuring out what is reasonable. What will this community bear? What will alumni bear? Okay. Just bring it in. Oh, man. All right. Well, I'll see you next time. Thank you.
It has been very hard to hear in the back, so just making sure it's on. Miriam Stern, 121 Ashford Road. Couple things. First of all, thank you, Mr. Goodwin, for your statement. I think the piece about coming together is important, and I think there's a lot of really strong views going on, which I actually think the discourse is good. It's really bad when nobody wants to run for Board of Ed and seats go, unfilled, and that's not a good sign. So the fact that there's a lot of discussion, I actually think is a good thing. It was brought up a few months ago about looking to move public comment earlier in the meeting, and although tonight is like a record early night, a few weeks ago it was not, or couple months ago, maybe a month and a half ago, it was a really long night. There's a lot of people who do once in a while want to make it to this meeting, or at least think about making it to this meeting, but it's, when I talk to people and I say, but just listen, public comments at the end, that could be 2-3 hours. It's just really hard. So please reconsider that again. That was a great idea. I'd love to see it. It seems like an easy ask. The second is I unfortunately only got to catch the live stream of last week's meeting. And I didn't get to make my public comment, so I'm going to make it now. My concern about rebuilding a building that we've only seen 30% of, the experts have only seen 30% of, is, let's say the costs go up by $1 million or $2 million. Let's say once they get in there, then we're looking at $15 million for a rebuilt building that may not be energy efficient, may not have newer technology, may not have other upgrades that actually in the long run maybe would bring improvement, maybe would bring more money. What if we had a theater like Cherokee? When they built a theater, they use it for rent it out to community groups. Voorhees rents their theater out to community groups. If we have a set number at $17 million, not that it couldn't go over for a new building, seems like we have a better shot at some potential even long-term savings with new efficiencies there, et cetera. When you're talking about a definitive, no questions asked, $13 million, I know, the architecture group said that would be the max, but I think given the fact that we have had no peer review, as was mentioned, which was a discussion, no second opinion, it really would benefit us, I think, to look again. And the other thing about potentially having a new theater is it is an opportunity for potential naming rights, and it's quite honestly, I think, a lot more attractive for a company to donate to a brand new state-of-the-art building than to donate and get their name on a rebuilt building. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, it's just a thought. So I really hope the alternative funding discussion is continuing and moving in the right direction. I hope that we're asking our legislators the hard questions of, well, what is that going to look like? What are you thinking of to help us with that?
Time is up.
I looked for the yellow. I didn't even see it.
It was there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Einhorn, 1017 Edgemore Road. So first of all, I want to thank Mrs. Wilson for answering my question on Quick Question. One of my concerns with this district is the size of your public relations department, because there is one person, okay, and there are many, many, many questions, as we've all observed on social media, or some of us have observed, and some of them are quite disturbing to me in their negativity, their context, and what you're not doing. And as a board, you have a lot to do. So that would be my request. I agree that we need to do more for security, but I would like to know how much is left in capital reserve to even begin to achieve another $1 million worth of security. I do have another question. And one of my concerns with social media, too, is the chronic singling out of some of the current sitting board members. I would caution those in the public as well as the board members to be very careful, because it does not look good to me. Okay, when certain board members are constantly singled out, gives me an impression that things are going on outside the system. That's my perception. I've been through that process before. Yes, Ben Ovadia, I do have concerns about a peer review group. It's a 2-year process, if we're lucky. I have a concern. I understand that people want funding and they want grants and they want this and they want that. It takes money. I do not believe our community will go for one facility at $17 million when there are so many other facilities to be concerned about. I also have a level of trust in the board and the administration that you're doing the right things for all of us, not just the students and the staff. I would like to see the Bessicas go in, check out these walls, figure out, God forbid, that there's more problems, and then bring that back to the board. And then if you want a peer review because you don't honor or value their opinion, please get the peer review. Spend the money. There was a mention, too, on the ad hoc committee, Mrs. Seidel. At one of the forums, it was made mention of a $1.2 million security grant that Lenape achieved. I've tried 4 times to get in touch with the Lenape School District. It's my understanding that was a Burlington County grant that they achieved. I don't know if Camden County has such a grant. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Going once? Going twice? If there's no other comments, did you have anything you want to comment? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for coming out. I really appreciate all the comments that were made tonight. And now we're going to move to adjourn. Do I have a Mrs. Matlack and Mrs. Scarpolino? Everyone in favor? All right. All right.